Hey Wargamers, today I have another army list review for you. If you're not familiar with this format, basically I take lists that are submitted to me by my supporters over on Patreon. I review them, talk about their strengths and weaknesses, and then produce a revised list that I think addresses those weaknesses and overall keeps a lot of the same flavor and tactics involved. So today we are looking at a super tanky list, so the emphasis is on tanks, and it is a list comprised of a battalion detachment and a brigade detachment, so 20 CP right off the bat. That is a lot of CP. A lot of tile lists don't absolutely need that number of CP in order to function optimally. So we could potentially look at changing the detachments here. There's a fair amount of flexibility built into this list already just based on that. We're using BattleScribe here. This is a free software that you can get for your PC or mobile device and is really useful for army construction. So check it out if you haven't used it before. All right, so jumping into it, we are looking at the battalion here to begin with. I will note that it's always important to have your Tau Sept choice specified. So if you look over on the left-hand side here, there's Tau Empire Sept choice. You can just go ahead and add that in there. I'm assuming that we are doing a Tau Sept list here. This battalion detachment could be something else, but the second detachment definitely has to be a Tau Sept, so I'm assuming this is also going to be Tau Sept. Looking at the HQ, we have a Cadre Fireblade. Fireblade is a fantastic choice for a HQ unit. It gives you a great source for marker lights and boosts your Fire Warrior teams in a really meaningful way. So Cadre Fireblades are a staple unit, a staple HQ choice if you ask me. The second HQ choice in this battalion is a Commander in XV-84 battle suit. That is the Forge World Crisis suit with kind of the apparatus on the back of the suit. That's its marker light. And this is a suit that is a flavorful choice, is an interesting choice. It's something that's exciting to see in a list and exciting to see on the tabletop because you don't see it very often. And it's a cool model, and that's always fantastic. The main idea, I think, with this commander is to help with marker light support, but there are other ways that we can do that. And I think really a more effective choice would be to either go in a different direction with our HQ choices, or if we wanted to have a commander with missile pods, just go with a standard crisis suit with missile pods and have him hang out in the back. This guy has 2 missile pods target lock for that marker light, and then he also has vector maneuvering thrusters as a signature system, which is useful because it allows him to jump, shoot, jump, and maybe get a little bit further away from impending doom in the form of assaults or encroaching enemies, but it's not absolutely necessary because he is a character. He doesn't need to jump, shoot, jump to avoid being targeted in a lot of cases. So that is not necessarily extremely useful in a long-range commander. I generally think of vector maneuvering thrusters being more useful on close-range commanders, like things with cyclic ion blasters or fusion blasters are going to be a little bit more exposed, and so giving them the vector maneuvering thrusters can help them a little bit more. He's also the Warlord, which if you're going with a commander as your Warlord, having it being a long-range commander, as this commander is a good choice. You don't really want your Warlord to be a Cold Star with fusion blasters, for example, because they typically die. So we want to avoid that Slay the Warlord loss here, so that's a fine choice there. For troops, we have 3 strike team units, 3 strike teams. Again, here we'll mention that it's important to have your sergeant character specified. So on the right-hand side here, we have Fire Warrior Shazwi. We can click that, and that's going to add a Shazwi to the list. We'll leave that unclicked for now, though, just for consistency. And yeah, so we have 5 Fire Warrior units. Those are a fantastic unit for troop choices. They're going to do a lot of work for you. Vespid are our fast attack choice here. There's 4 Vespid, which is a great flavorful choice again, but really Vespid are not in a great place right now rules-wise. They do offer some tactical flexibility. In particular, these guys are going to give you a little bit more mobility than you have built into the list already. They're going to be good for camping objectives and maybe pushing 1 or 2 guys off of an objective, picking up stragglers, things like that. But I would advise against bringing Vespid in general, but certainly if you are going to be bringing Vespid, you need more than 4. 4 aren't going to really contribute a whole lot offensively, and they really lack the staying power to be on the board much longer than a single shooting phase. So we want more bodies than this if we were going to take Vespid, but considering the point limitations here and the overall emphasis on tanks, which are going to take up a lot of those points, I think the Vespid probably will not be making an appearance in the revised list for those reasons. We can look for other units to do kind of our mobility and objective capture, things like that. In heavy support, we have 2 heavy bombardment hammerheads. These are the missile pod hammerhead variant from Forge World. No longer being produced, but you can find alternative scalps and things like that. A few of the original Forge World models can be found like on eBay and things like that. Very cool. I think that these guys are a great list addition, especially when you are taking Longstrike, as you can see down at the bottom of the screen here is in the 2nd detachment. These guys, before the chapter approved changes to points on broadsides, I thought they were a strong competitor to broadsides because of that increased ballistic skill in the presence of Longstrike. They have 2 smart missile systems and 2 high yield missile pods, so essentially the exact same as most of your broadsides are going to be, and that is huge. Being able to have the same weapon loadout with a higher ballistic skill is really valuable. The downside, of course, is that these are vehicles, and in a meta where there are a lot of armies that are equipped to deal with things like knights, vehicles, especially hammerheads, are not going to have a lot of staying power, for the simple reason that anything that can kill a knight can kill a hammerhead fairly easy. So hammerheads don't have a lot of durability, and neither do broadsides for that matter on their own, but broadsides, unlike hammerheads, can take advantage of saber protocols, and that's really the key advantage to broadsides now, is that they can use saber protocols and mitigate a lot of that anti-tank damage. So overall, in a more competitively minded army list, I would say switch these out for broadsides, but because we're going with this tank theme, I think these will do just fine and are cool. You're going to have plenty of tanks in this list, so you'll get a few turns of shooting out of them just because of target saturation alone. So I think that these are a great choice here. I will say another thing about broadsides is that they can take a support system, which these guys can't. So taking the advanced targeting system or shield generator, target lock, anything like that is going to, again, give the broadsides a little bit of advantage. So, again, in general, I would recommend going to broadsides, but these are such a cool addition to the list that they have to stay. So that's the first detachment. The second detachment is this Brigade detachment, giving us an additional 12 CP. And in that HQ slot, we have Shadow Sun. She is equipped with Shield Drone and the Command Link Drone. Shield Drone is not necessarily essential. It's nice because it has an improved invulnerable save, but a lot of times Shield Drones don't die to direct shooting. They die to saber protocols, and that improved invulnerable save doesn't help them there. Additionally, the Command Link Drone is useful because it gives you essentially a marker light benefit without having to have a marker light on a target, but we're not really hurting for marker lights here. I think most of the things that we're going to be shooting at will be able to have one marker light on them, so that's not essential. Both of these things, I think, are kind of in the luxury purchase category. They're not essential. They do bring some things to the table, but they're not needed either way, really. For our second HQ choice, we have Dark Strider. Dark Strider is a fantastic choice in infantry heavy lists because he allows them to fall back and shoot, and also can use the structural analyzer to give you +1 to wound against targets, which is very useful, but it only applies to one unit. And in a list like this, you can see below here too that all of our infantry units are minimum size squads, and so you're really not getting that much value out of Dark Strider on his own because of that. Instead, you'd actually probably be more benefited by having a second Cadre Fireblade, because then that allows you to spread out your Fire Warriors a little bit more and use the volley fire ability a little bit more evenly throughout your army without having to have everybody clustered around the one Cadre Fireblade. We also have Longstrike, which is an absolute must in this list. If we're bringing hammerheads, the first hammerhead you should always bring is going to be Longstrike. All right. I don't know if you guys can see the little profiles popping up here, but they keep popping up for me, and it's a little distracting. So if that's happening for you, I'm sorry. But Longstrike is a fantastic choice because he boosts the ballistic skill of other hammerheads. Including those heavy bombardment hammerheads we mentioned earlier. So he is essential to this list and is equipped with smart missile system and ion cannon. We could also give him seeker missiles. Seeker missiles are a fantastic choice on hammerheads because you can utilize that 2-up ballistic skill to deliver a seeker missile. You can't do that with any other unit. So having this ability is valuable, and for 5 points of seeker missile, I think it's a good investment if you can make it happen. So, if we're coming down to a matter of a couple points here, dollars and cents, instead of taking the shield drone or the command link drone, I'd rather have a couple seeker missiles on a hammerhead, including Longstrike. So that's where I would invest the points there. In troops, because this is a brigade detachment, we have to have 6 troops. And that probably explains a lot of why these troops are minimum size squads. But we have 3 breacher teams and 3 strike teams. The 3 breacher teams are cool. Breacher teams are useful. I think they're particularly good in Vior-La detachments, but pretty much anything's good in a Tau detachment too. So that works. The one thing here is if we were going to be looking to use them alongside Darkstrider, so put a unit of 10 breachers in a Devilfish with Darkstrider, we would want them to be a single unit. As it is right now, we have 2 5-man units and then an additional third 5-man unit of breachers. And breachers really need to close the gap quickly. They need to be able to be where they want to be when they want to be there. And so they need to be in a Devilfish or maybe be Vior-La, something that allows them to get going quickly. And so 15 breachers is actually above the carrying capacity of a Devilfish, so we could only bring 2 of these units. For that reason, I would say switch at least one of these units over to a strike team. But overall, not an essential part of this list. I think you could switch it out for strike teams and do just as well, if not better. For elites, we have Dayak Rek. Dayak Rek is a great economy elite choice because he's only 20 points, and he gives you a lot of tactical flexibility. He can pop up wherever he wants, and that can allow you to capture objectives, get line breaker, things like that. He also does mortal wounds, which can't be underestimated. That's super valuable. So if we're looking for something to fill an elite slot, Dayak Rek is a great choice. We have 2 Firesight Marksmen, bringing some Marker Light support as well. Good, very conventional choice at this point. Fast attack, we have 2 units of Crude Hounds, so 8 Crude Hounds total, and a unit of tactical drones, which are gun drones. The gun drones, I think, are good. We can use saber protocols for our characters and for our infantry. But really, I think the reason why these are gun drones and not anything else is because they're going to be used as a deep striking unit, and they're kind of in the same boat as the Vespid. And I suppose if you deep struck the Vespid and the tactical drones together, you'd actually have a sizable amount of firepower going in one direction, and that's useful. But still, it's not a ton, especially because they're only hitting on 5s and there's only 4 gun drones. They will not stay on the board very long, and so they have some utility here, but they're not going to be something that you can rely on for more than a turn, really, especially given their leadership. The Crude Hounds are really just taken here to take up fast attack slots for the Brigade detachment, and I think this is a common thing that we all want to do, is try to maximize the number of CP that we can get, and in doing so, sometimes we take choices that we take just to fill the slot, and that can be good. Like in the case of Dayak Rek, that can work out fine, I think. But Crude Hounds are have very limited utility in a list, and I think overall they make the list weaker. We could spend those 32 points somewhere else. We could spend it on seeker missiles, for example, or something else, and have a overall stronger list with fewer command points. And so I would opt away from Crude Hounds and towards building a detachment that really is all the things that we want and not things that we're taking just because we want to fill up the slots. And that could be the case with these Crude Hounds. I don't know if these Crude Hounds have some sort of sentimental value, or if they're just kind of a favorite unit or anything like that. But I certainly think that they are a cool unit, and I want to see more Crude stuff in general. But as far as this list is concerned, I don't know if they're the right choice here. So moving on to heavy support, we have 3 Hammerhead gunships with ion cannon and 2 smart missile systems each. Sounds good. That's the way that we want to go with this loadout, absolutely. But again, we could take seeker missiles for that little extra, je ne sais quoi about taking hammerheads. You get long strikes, so you get those 2 up ballistic skill. Seeker missiles is pretty darn sweet. So I would go with that if we have the points, and then we have that dedicated transport. And again, we only have 1 hammerhead or 1 devilfish, so we can't fit all those breachers. And so I think that's kind of straddling the fence here, is between, useful and not, in terms of either the devilfish or the breachers. So overall, I think that this list is pretty good. There are a few places where I would use the points differently, like with these Vespid, and then the fast attack down below. But overall, I think the list is pretty darn good. And the issues that stand out to me are that the issue that's endemic to hammerheads or any type of vehicle-based list is that it has to compete with knights, and so knights are going to be able to take it out fairly quickly because they have the weaponry to do so, and then things that are geared to take out knights are also going to be able to take out vehicles. So that's a challenge. We have a lot of infantry bodies here, which is nice, but they are not going to be around very long either. They don't have a particularly high durability or anything. Really, their advantage in terms of staying power is their numbers. And so if you're going up against a list that's equipped to deal with infantry, they're not going to stay very long. If you're dealing with a list that's equipped to deal with knights, the army's not going to stay very long. And then once those hammerheads are gone, your infantry probably aren't going to be able to do much damage to the remaining opposing force. So overall, I think this list is pretty rock paper scissory in terms of matchups. I would like to see a little bit more durable objective grabbing. So we have, I guess we have the Devilfish. Devilfish and the Breachers have some durability to them. The Crude Hounds, Tactical Drones, Vespid do not. And for that reason, I think that's largely the area that I would go towards in terms of the revision, is trying to get a little bit more staying power in our objective capture, and then also in general, whether that's in the gun line or upfield, having a little bit more staying power here. And then also, if we look at the distribution of weapon profiles here, there's not a lot in between the ion cannon profile and the pulse rifle profile. I mean, pretty much most of the shots here are actually pulse rifles, which is standard. But then we have the high yield missile pods, and then the ion cannons are really the only other damage dealing weapons here. And we don't have a ton of them. Taking seeker missiles will help with that. But really, I think getting some more shots in kind of that middle ground will be useful for taking out heavy infantry and vehicles, in addition to the support given by the ion cannon. So, right, let's look at the revised list. Shoot. All right, here is the revised list. I have whittled it down to just 1 brigade detachment. Now, there's some flexibility here. We could, make some choices later down the list that would allow us to take more HQ choices, and therefore split this off into like an Outrider detachment or Vanguard detachment, things like that. That would give us a little bit more CP, but really we're at 15 CP here. I think that's pretty good, and not going to really hurt the overall performance of the list. So I think we're taking more efficient choices here in a smaller package, and that should play out beneficially overall. So that's why we're down to 15 CP here instead of 20. We have our Tausap specified here. And then in HQ, we have a Cutter Fireblade. This guy's actually going to be our Warlord this time. I think if looking at the HQ choices that we have, the Cutter Fireblade is probably going to be the last one to die, most likely, or be relatively hard to shoot at. So taking him as your warlord can be advantageous as kind of a mitigation of enemy firepower. And then he also has the Pure Engram Neurochip as his signature system. The Pure Engram Neurochip, not nearly as useful as it used to be, but still good. So I think that's that's a good choice for a warlord there, I'd say. And then we have Commander Shadowsun. She doesn't have her drones this time, but she's still in the list. I think she's kind of in a weird position in this list and in the original list in terms of really the reason why you bring Shadowsun is because she has the ability to call Kauyon twice. And you're going to do that, but you don't really need to do that with the Hammerheads because they are going to have access to Longstrike and therefore be buffed by him. And it's just kind of awkward to have her in the middle of all the Hammerheads. So Hammerheads don't need to be next to Shadowsun, but everything else can be. And so if you're going to cement your units in place for 2 turns, having all your strike teams cemented in place can be useful. But really, some of the other components of this list are going to be really what we're looking for using her for. So keep that in mind. Longstrike is essential, just like we talked about. I did not give him Seeker Missiles just because we ran out of points, and if we're talking about who's going to die first, it's going to be Longstrike. So we might as well kind of mitigate some of that and put the Seeker Missiles on things that aren't going to die right away. So if you don't get first turn, it's not that big of a deal. Or at least not as big of a deal as it would be if you had more points invested in Longstrike and he dies. For troops, we have 6 strike teams. So I got rid of the breachers. They did give you some mobility and some flexibility, but just based on the way the list was shaping out, I thought sticking with strike teams was going to be better, especially because I ended up cutting the Devilfish. So without the Devilfish, we should take strike teams because breachers need a way to get to where they're going. Elites, we have 3 Firesight Marksmen, so that brings us to 4 Marker Lights total. Yes, that means that getting 5 Marker Lights is going to require spending a CP, but a lot of the times, especially with having 2 Kaoyuns with Shadowsun, you're not necessarily going to need 5 Marker Lights. So not a huge issue here. We have 2 Riptides, and these are equipped with a Heavy Burst Cannon, Smart Missile System, Advanced Targeting, and Velocity Tracker. This is an atypical loadout for me. Typically, I go with Target Lock and over the Velocity Tracker, but if they're going to be next to Shadowsun, because they're really the guys that we're expecting to benefit most from her presence, I don't think it makes sense to give them Target Lock because they're not going to be moving. So giving them the Velocity Tracker is potentially useful every turn of the game, and they're going to get a benefit, and this also helps reduce some of the lack of Marker Light here. So a good choice, I think, overall. This is really going to address that core issue of durability and staying power on the battlefield. Having these Riptides there with their invulnerable save is going to be something that I think really, kind of gives you a little bit more of a staying power on the tabletop, and will force your opponent to really think, do I want to shoot the Hammerheads or do I want to shoot the Riptides? And when the opponent has to make a choice like that, and the result of either choice is going to be advantageous to you, that's how you get a tactical advantage. So I think that's a good choice here. It did require making some sacrifices, so that's why we don't have the Devilfish, right? Is because we needed points for Riptides. They're not cheap. They are not cheap. And then for fast attack, we have 3 units of tactical drones in order to support those Riptides, and they're all shield drones, of course. Then for heavy support, we have 3 Hammerhead gunships and a heavy bombardment Hammerhead. So the 3 Hammerheads are equipped just like before, but one of them has 2 Seeker Missiles, and 2 of them have 1 Seeker Missile. Again, just instead of putting 2 Seeker Missiles on one guy and none on the other, I'm trying to spread out the Seeker Missiles so that it doesn't hurt as much if one of those dies, right? We are spreading out our points and not putting all of our eggs in one basket, essentially. Then for the heavy bombardment gunship, we have the high yield missile pod and gun drones. So good loadout here as well. Like I said, you could make some choices somewhere along the line here to get another Counter Fireblade or another HQ choice and break it off to get more CP, but I really don't think that's necessary. I think we are totally fine with this amount of CP. Our mobility is going to come from Riptide's late game and from strike teams in the early game, but most often you're probably going to want to gunline it, turn 1 and 2, and then spread out and capture objectives, that sort of thing. You can use various mechanisms here to get across the board fairly quickly after turns 1 and 2, and even if you want to use your hammerheads to kind of get some board control early on, that's not a problem either. So overall, I think this list is still pretty rock paper scissory. You're still going to have some issues against lists that are built to take out knights. I mean, that's just how it goes when you take hammerheads. But I think this gives us a more well-rounded offensive profile in general, as well as some flexibility and staying power. So I think this list would work out pretty darn well. I would love to hear your guys' feedback on it. What things do you like about the list? Which things don't you like? How would you change it? And what things do you think would work well or not work well in it? So let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, if you want me to review a list for you, you can join our community over on Patreon. But as always, happy wargaming.
Hey everyone, this video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there as well. Special thanks to No Excuses Panda, Scott Heater, Tao Oswald, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Scott J. Smith, Stephen Cohen, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Benjamin, RP, Julian Peck, Andy M. Young, Peter Benjamin Parker, and Giovanni DiMaggio.